Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu, and today I'm going to bring you a deck interview for the Top Cut Bandai EVO event. So, introduce yourself and your amazing accomplishment.
I'm Sean Nelson, aka Wulfknightz. I've been seen around Digimon for a while now. I'm the leader of Team Wolfpack. First place I've taken. I have plenty of top eights, but it feels good to finally get that win. Just happy to put one of those wins on the shelf and not have to just take a top eight again.
So, who exactly is Team Wolfpack?
Starting Digimon, in the past, I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And I had a team basically to be able to practice with, kind of have that general idea of togetherness with a small group to be able to do well with each other and be able to get all that practice in. And so when I started Digimon, I played the first tournament, just kind of jumped in, realized I didn't have nearly as much practice as I wanted to, and figured why not start a team again since I was going pretty much all in on Digimon and really wanted to get a team together. And so I just kind of built the idea and started recruiting more and more people that had the idea, needed a place to call home and be able to work with people. And now here we are, about 20 members strong.
So, what exactly are your team's top accomplishments so far?
In most recent, I now have a sixth place in the previous premier event, the Attack Games, and then this one is my first place. We also have Rio that just recently got sixth place in PPG and sixth place in a premier event as well. On top of that, we have plenty of other top eights from a lot of other things. Those are just the big ones since they're all more official and big style tournaments. Obviously, there's a lot more top eights throughout smaller events and stuff, but those are the really big ones that come to mind.
And then, who are your most top performing players or your most active team members?
So we got a lot of active team members since we have so many content creators and stuff like that on there. We have a lot of active players. I would say performance-wise is going to be me and Rio at the moment. However, we have a lot of big-time members that are just starting off, have kind of been doing okay overall, and we're just needing a place to really hone their skills and become better. And so we are seeing more and more of the players starting to rise up in the ranks, starting to get those top 32s, those top 16s. And before you know it, probably more of them will start getting those top 8 spots.
And then, what would you say your team's goals and values are?
Well, we like to argue a lot, I'll tell you that. But the overall goal is to get the best performance we can. Plus, kind of create that small community. Again, it's good to have a place to let your frustrations out, your accomplishments out, to be able to discuss decks, test them, whatever it is. Basically, it's just the whole idea and the whole reason why it's modeled after the Wolfpack is the idea is it's a close-knit group that work together to meet their common goals, which in this case is usually doing as good as we can in these tournaments in a consistent manner.
And then before we get into the deck profile, do you have any other shout-outs for your team that you want to do?
Team-wise, definitely want to give a shout-out to Rio. I spent a lot of time talking with him in fine-tuning a couple parts of this deck because I've been bouncing with these numbers quite a bit. Along with just everyone else in the team. I mean, we talk constantly about matchups, what's good, what's bad, some of the ways to beat the decks, what are some of the strategies and techs we need. And then outside of team, I gotta give some extra shout outs too, just because I can't take full accomplishment of this deck without calling them out. Eli Hill, for one, I talked to him a bit. I really looked a lot at Eli's deck before building this because he plays first as well, and I really took an idea of how his deck was modeled and the ratios to kind of get an idea of how could I do what I'm trying to do and match what he was doing. I also want to give a shout out to more content creators that I watched a lot of games of. Obviously, I didn't play them heavily or anything like that, but their matchups and that they were playing on stream really helped. You got Max Tapera, who's playing the green a lot on stream, allowed me to really break that down and try to think about some of the things I need to have to really be able to beat that matchup because it can be a very tough one. Along with Benjamin Lee, he was playing a lot of yellow recently. I know he was struggling through some of the things he was doing, and he was really making a lot of changes and really allowed me to really break down some of his matchups because he played a lot of matchups on stream. And because of all those, I was really able to get some good information from that before I led to this. And then I also want to shout out Hong that also gave me some discussion on Mastemon and stuff like that, and which also led to this kind of hybrid deck.
All right, so going into the deck, what did you use?
All right, so first off, the eggs. So this ratio had changed a few times depending on what I was trying to do. I landed on 4 Upa and 1 Koromon, mainly because since this deck was going a little bit more on the aggro pace, the Koromon really wasn't doing anything. And when I look back on it, because none of my games actually went to the 5th egg, I could highly see me just pulling out this Koromon and running for Upa, because Koromon underneath the stack felt bad because I never got its effect off to mean anything. Whereas Upa was actually getting me to my pieces. And as you'll see later with some of the counts that I go with, digging deep actually helps heavily, whereas this Koromon doesn't. And so consistently seeing those 4 Upamon is a lot more important. Luckily, Koromon was only my egg early game, maybe once or twice, and I typically always saw Upa, but I could really see that Koromon coming out because he's really not doing much in this deck. Then we got, in the rookie package, we got a very heavy recovery package. So I run the 4 Sala recoveries. The recovery on it's only happened like once or twice in my matchups, but it's just nice to know that it's there and I have options for it. Obviously, we got the 4 Pulse. I know some people will bounce back and forth between 3 and 4. I run 4 just because so many of the plays that I make are off of his 2-cost ability, and when dropping him at 3, oh man, I get so much value that it's hard to not play him at 4. The 4 Bushis, out of what would have been 14 games total, I Bushied for game 12 out of those 14 games. So Bushi's obviously the MVP, because without the Bushis, I wouldn't be able to clean out some of those games like I did. To be able to go in and get 2 extra swings out of nowhere that they couldn't control was huge. And then to round that off, for the normal rookies, we got 2 promo Patamons. So this is the spot that's usually taken up by the Lotmons. And I did a lot of thinking about this, and Lotmon's not bad. It's actually a great card. I just had a lot of situations where the Lotmon just didn't do anything. Or I was trying to cheat out rookies, or I was trying to bring rookies back from the trash, and the promo Patamon just got more value in. Now, again, he didn't do a bunch in this whole tournament, but I did have at least 3 different times where I cheated him out with either a Mastemon or one of my other 6s to actually get him out and get me back up there to a point where now I'm at like 3+ security, depending on what my plays were, and it saved me games. So, and it's basically a Lucemon that you can Digivolve with. And then top of that, I run the 2 Lucemons, which was another big one today because the amount of times that I cheat Lucemon out in this deck is huge, and it allows me to really dig deep into my security and then bounce back to 3 out of nowhere, to where now I have a board and 3 security. So these Lucemons were also huge factors. For the 4s, for the most part, I play the traditional 4 Turuiemons, the 4 Pedos, and I run 2 of the Unis, and then I run 2 of the Promogatos. So for the most part, the difference that I made here is typically you'd run the 3 Unis instead of the split. As you're going to see, there's some ratios later that I change that allows me to fit another 4 in. So I decided to be able to fit it in. I did the split of the Unis and the Gatomons. The Gatomons weren't like huge game changers 1,000 times throughout the tournament. However, there were a couple times where I did make the play with Mastemon that allowed me to get the Gato out, to get the heal and a blocker, enough to where it actually saved me a turn and then allowed me to come back for game next turn. So it does come in. I really don't see too much of a difference between Uni and Gatomon. So, I mean, potentially you could go back to just the normal lineup and it would be fine. I just like having the extra recovery options, because the more recovery options I have, the more chance I have to get my life back up to be able to go for game. And then the 5s, we got 4 Angewomons. Obviously, for the cheating out, since the whole name of the game, this deck is to be able to cheat out and aggro as much as possible, got to get those 4 Angewomons in. I run 3 WarGrowls. The Digibursting didn't come in as much as needed. Like, I didn't kill a crap ton with it. Usually, if I was doing a play with this, it was in combination with a Wargray. So on its own, it wasn't killing too much, but in combination with Wargray, it was finishing off bodies. Plus, the extra 1k does matter a lot when swinging with Wargray. Especially if I have to go into a clearing of a body like another Wargray or something, that 1,000 does make a difference. And then these two recovery Angewomons have gone back and forth. I mean, I've done 881. I also pondered the idea of Antilemons in this spot as well for the efficient Digivolving to only go up for 2 more. But in the end, it comes down to the same reason why I have Gatomons, the way the rookies are lined up. I just wanted as much recovery as possible available to the deck. And there was plenty of times where I Angewomon into level 5 and got the recovery in, again, to stabilize my security stack from making an aggressive move and filling the board. Now I want to go ahead and get to some extra recovery. And it worked in the long run. Then 6s, we got 3 Wargreys. The 6s are definitely a spot where the biggest argument for me was coming to, because a lot of the rookies was pretty set. I didn't have much really discussion. The rookies, I knew where I wanted to go with them. The 4s were pretty much straightforward. It was just a matter of, do I run 1 Gato, 2 Gatos, 0 Gatos? Once I fit an extra spot here, that count was easy. 5s are pretty straightforward. The 6s is where I had the biggest argument, because I had the choice of going full aggro, going partial aggro, and going removal, so I can get some extra control pieces in there. And after talking to Rio for a bit, we decided that if I was going to go with the other set of cards that I was going with, that going full aggro was the way to go. And because of that, I went with the 2 Magnas and the 2 Mastemons. So this basically says that I want the name of the game to be, I'm going in for double swings with WarGreymon, getting Angewomon effect off twice. I'm going with Magna and Angewomon to get 2 off, or I'm making a Mastemon play on top of Angewomon and I'm resurrecting one, and I'm going to swing in and get the Angewomon effect. So this whole lineup is built off of nothing but trying to cheat it out. Again, this kind of lineup here and then the ratios here kind of go back to Eli Hill's build, and kind of like what True Champ Steven was doing, where he was doing the split of the 2 and 2. I looked at a lot of the Japan lists and stuff like that, and I was seeing a lot of 4s with 3 of something else. I didn't feel like I wanted 4 Wargreys. I know a lot of people have come down off the 4 Wargreys because sometimes they could just feel bad at 4. So I went kind of the 3-2-2 split that many people were doing, like True Champ Steven and stuff. So I went that route. And then what I used kind of was like, okay, let me look at Eli's deck. Why was Eli's deck doing so well? And it's because he was doing the same thing. He was cheating out Digimon, and it was working for him. He could finish those games with Bushis. He could get those Lucemons on the field very easily, and so he was putting bodies after body on the board and getting the healing in, and he was cheating them out. And so the only real difference is, instead of me going straight 3 Magnadramons, is I'm adding Mastemons in. The reason the Mastemons are there is to help with things like 2CC or other decks that have very scary options. If I can reduce 1 without swinging in, I'm now increasing the chance of me not getting shut out by a Flower Cannon or a Gaia Force. It just allows me to get 1 swing in without actually swinging ever. And then I can still swing with the Mastemon, get the second swing in like Wargrey, and still cheat out more Digimon. So, and I tried the full Mastemon deck from George, and it's a great deck, but it felt bad against green, and green was coming up in numbers, and I was really afraid to play the full Mastemon deck with nothing but 5Ks. And so that's where I took the idea of that George was showing that Mastemon's good in this format, but I wanted to use the power of Wargrey and the cheating out of your rookies mixed with that. And so here's where I spent the last few days basically saying, how can I get what George was doing? Because shout out to George too, forgot him. What Eli was doing. What are all these Wargrey players doing, or the people that are playing yellow? What is it they're doing that's actually causing it to win so much? And half of them were either controlling the board and destroying them, which works if your opponent is committing a lot. Otherwise, if they're playing chicken, how else can I come back at them and make the chicken in my favor? And that's, how can I put 3 to 4 bodies on board in one turn and make it to where my opponent can't come back? I only play 2 Valdur arms just because there's only 5 yellows. I mean, I pondered with the idea of even cutting Magna down, going maybe like a 4-3 split, going like maybe 1 to 2 Valdur and 1 Millenniumon. It was definitely an option. I was a little afraid to go 4 and 3 because now that's 7 cards that are eating from my stack. And while the deck is built around a bunch of restoration and getting those cards back in, I was a little afraid that 7 6s that are taking from my stack would be a little bit bad and put me down too fast. And so I wanted to bounce out as much as possible. That's why the Magnas are in there, because they did do some work today when I didn't want to go into one of these. I had a couple plays where Magna worked. So the 2 Valdur arm, I could see maybe fitting more in. I won plenty of games with never actually going into Valdur. Valdur was really my comeback card that allowed me to clear a board and then come back the following turn. So it was more or less of a aggressive stance. As the rest of this did what it needed to without Valdur. Valdur's there just as the backup, so usually I just kept it in hand until a point where I needed it. And then here comes the most controversial spot of the whole deck. And I had people asking me about this all day long. I only play 2 Blinding Ray and 2 TKs. So the main reason being is that when I am drawing into these cards, when I was at 3 of each, what basically tended to happen was I either drew 0 of them or I saw all 3. I wasn't getting very many of these in between games where I was seeing, okay, I only saw 1 of them the whole game, or I saw, 2. I kept seeing all 3 throughout the game, or I was seeing none and they were like the bottom of my stack or bottom of my security stack. So I was thinking, well, that's causing me to lose games, because if I'm drawing into TK after TK after TK and I'm not in a spot where I can spend 4 and go pull something needed from my stack, I've now put myself in such a position where I can't come back because I'm drawing into nothing but TKs. And while TK is a great card, and I would argue it's needed to be out to not be choked and win the match a lot of times, at 3, it was just clogging. I can argue that Blinding Ray could go back to 3 and it would fit with the deck style just perfectly, and it wouldn't hurt. But again, I got tired of seeing too many in the security stack or drawing them and not getting anything to combo off with them. And so I did go 2 and 2 to try to stop that. I saw them enough. I mean, I would say half the games I probably played a TK, the other half I didn't. But I found that with the more aggressive style, you can win without the TK. The Blinding Rays you need, because it did help me finish off a lot of the games. And so I would argue if you're gonna up that Blinding Ray back to 3, I still would argue for TK at 2, just so you're not overseeing them.
Okay, so the deck obviously performed pretty well. So what were your matchups?
All right, so today, over 7 rounds, round 1, I had what I like to call the War Shine deck, which is just a War Gray and Shine mixed, which is actually a deck I pondered a little bit before I came to this one. In testing of draws and stuff, it did draw a little weird at times, and so it is a little bit slower still, but it is powerful when it gets to middle late game. I went ahead and 2-0'd that deck. Interesting enough, I double bricked those games. So both the first and second game, I completely was without a rookie for the first 3 turns in both games, but managed to come back through different removal and aggressive plays to be able to cheat bodies out and get myself back up. Obviously, that's what the Valdur arm was for. Any game I fell behind in or bricked in, if it wasn't for Valdur arm, I wouldn't have been able to come back and turn it around the next couple turns after that. Round 2 was Dan Devi, again 2-0'd it. He did brick game 2. Game 1, I just basically pushed into him heavily, and he never got a chance to get 7 in the graveyard. Same with game 2. He never got there. At both games, I think he got to maybe 4 or 5 Demomons into the actual trash. So I never allowed his deck to go off because I pushed too heavily into him. Round 3 was Control Green. So it was a Hercules deck. He did push into his Hercs a lot. He played the style of get his Hercs out efficiently onto the board, but they were always suspended because he was always going into a Digisorption play. So he was keeping his Hercs suspended a lot. And so because I was just being patient and I was in the raising area, I would get to the point where I would just come out and I'd kill his Herc, clear his board, and fill it with more bodies. And all of a sudden, he's got nothing on board. I got 3 or 4 bodies on board, and I get my security back up to like 3 security. There was one game where I did brick a little bit early on. I think it was game 2, I bricked early and came back with just a pretty big play that turned the whole game, and then he never came back from there, and I was able to push for a game, I think either the next turn or the turn after. Round 4 was Purple Melga. I want to say he did pretty well overall. He was getting things out. We did have a discussion about Purple Melga's issue being that if the combo pieces aren't coming in the right order, if you're not seeing the option cards with your Melga, it can get kind of awkward. And I think he got to that point where he never got to a spot where he could double Nailbone. I would say if he was able to double Nailbone at any point in time and had the perfect setup, he probably could have taken it. The issue was because I pushed into him so fast with so many bodies, he never got to a point where he was able to get there efficiently without putting blockers out or trying to destroy something. So pushing heavily into that deck really made the difference. Round 5 was a mirror match. Again, I just pushed into him very heavily. I want to say the first couple turns in both those games, I just got to a spot where I wargrade and I brought out bodies right away. So with this deck, unless it was a deck where they have a card that's going to clear my field, for example, like green, if I felt like they didn't have a card that was going to swing it, I just pushed in. I went to Wargrey. I came out. I got myself to 3 security. I put 3 bodies on the board in one turn, got a couple swings in, and killed half their security stack, getting myself back up to 3, 4 security, 5 security, depending what my hand was and stuff like that. 4 security. Yeah, I never got back to 5. So I was able to get back to 4 security usually, get a board established, and have them with nothing on board. And with all that, now they're in a tough spot to come back. And so game 1 and game 2 against that yellow Wargrey was definitely like that. I felt a little bad for him the second game because he got to a point where he was just like, I don't know what to do, and my board was filled, and I killed off all but his one body he had, and even if he goes into like a Wargrey, he was going to be in a tough spot. Round 6, this player was actually playing something similar to mine. So him and I took a very similar approach to the deck. He did have a couple other choices. Like he did go 4 Wargrey, 2 Mastemon, so he goes the 6/6s package with the heavier on the Wargrey. He also, I think instead of the Gatos, he ends up playing, I think he played the minus DP Gatos. I want to say he might have fit in a 1 or 2 of the negative DP Salas as well. But a lot of the other stuff, he was running a lot of the same ratios, and we talked a bit. So it seemed like he, somewhere along the line, got the same idea of, hey, this is the way to go. And he made it pretty far. I think he topped 8 as well. So shout out to that guy. I just drew a little bit better and put a little bit more aggression into the match, and just I was able to get to a stronger point before he was. Difference maker there. Then round 7 was Rookie Rush, and it's just, my eyes lit up when I saw that was my round 7, because I feel like this deck is very strong against Rookie Rush because it puts out the same kind of pressure that Rookie Rush can, but it has recovery and removal. And so when you mix that into the aggression style that Rookie Rush has, he gets me down a couple on my stack pretty early, but then I go, I don't care, and I turn around and I go into Wargrey and I start sniping off things, and then I bring out Lucemons and stuff like that to start healing up. And before you know it, his board's cleared. I'm sitting at 3 or 4 security, and there's no gas he's going to be able to come that quick to be able to come back. And so I feel pretty good going to that matchup. I think the only way I truly lose that matchup in most days is going to be if I brick really, really bad, just because Rookie Rush doesn't really brick that hard very often and can push so much. And so shout out to that guy, because he was able to push past 6 rounds with Rookie Rush, and it's not an easy tournament this meta to be able to push Rookie Rush that far. So shout out to that guy. But I hit hard. I think both those games only went a couple turns, and I already had a board filled and his board cleared within the first 3 turns, and my security stack was only down a couple, and so he just was never able to even try to establish anything to come back. I'd also say that part of what allowed me to win today was the fact that both 2CC decks that were in the top 8 area faced each other and tied, making it to where the tournament was 1 round less and impossible for me to face them because they took themselves out of the undefeated markers. And so that automatically paired me with the Rookie Rush. I have a couple tech pieces in here that help with that matchup. It's a hard matchup. I'm not going to say it's not a win. I'm not going to say it's not a loss. I've gone to ties against that deck. It's a rough deck to play, and I mean, I put the couple of things I put in this deck are specifically for that. The last time I played against it, I did tie against it, and when I built this, that was one of the things I had in mind. I never got a chance to see how some of the stuff fired off against it. Things like Mastemon and the heavy recovery, so that when they are trying to ping me with damage, I could clear out their stuff and heal a bit, get some bodies out efficiently, sneak bodies back in through Mastemon, sneak them out through Angewomon, trying to get as many bodies on board to make it harder to clear. That was the goal. That was the deck I had in mind when building this, because all the other matchups, I knew them enough, and I knew no matter how I built the WarGrey, most of the other matches I could push against and be fine. But that's the one matchup I find the hardest, and I really just wanted to do anything I could to be able to fight that deck. And I never got to try to see what happened. I could have easily just lost, and that could have been the difference maker. So definitely, I'm happy that those two decks faced each other, tied it out, making it impossible for me to actually face them in the top 8 in the final match.
All right, so with all that being said, would there be anything you'd want to change based on what you saw and how the deck performed, or going forward, anything you noticed that you think you could tweak a little bit?
The only thing I'd be pondering at this point, just because Gatomon didn't do a lot, it had a couple times where it came out, I could potentially see Gatomon becoming a third Unimon and a third Blinding Ray. I think it can go either way there. I wouldn't mind having the third Blinding Ray back in there. I would say the deck ran hot, and I saw the Blinding Rays when I was supposed to see them, but it could have easily gone the other way, and those Blinding Rays could have been the security, or I didn't draw them. At 2, it's very possible for that to happen. I wanted to test 2 mainly because I kept having issues with overclogging at 3. But again, the deck looked a little bit different then. It didn't go as aggro. It didn't want me to say, hey. Usually it was I was holding on to the Blinding Rays instead of let's proactively use them and just fill a board. Whereas this tournament, the amount of times I Blinding Rayed early to get into a WarGrey and fill the board up within the first few turns, I did that a lot this tournament. So I could see, because of this being more aggressive, this going back up to 3, Gatomon going back to a third Unimon, and it would probably be perfectly fine. Other than that, I feel like everything else is good. It's in its place. You could argue Magna gets switched out with slashes again, but I think anytime I saw Magna, I didn't go, I wish as a slash in my hand, because I pushed for bodies on the board and made them deal with it, rather than saying I want to slash and then they deal with slash, which isn't that hard because of its 8k body. I really like the idea of my 6s being 10k plus, just because it makes a big difference when you have a stack that's a 10k or above, because slash gets killed so easily that it feels bad most time when it happens. You got to kill something, but then they killed it more efficiently again, and it's pretty bad. So I think that'd be the only change I would absolutely make. I would probably leave the rest as is.
And then what would you say your hardest matchup of the event was?
Control green, probably, just for the simple fact that it scares the crap out of me, because I'm pushing so much bodies on the board that a Nidhogg can wreck your day. That was the one matchup where I probably stood back a little bit longer than the average compared to my other matches, because I wanted to make sure I didn't give him Nidhogg value. So if I was pushing for bodies, I was doing things like putting Lucemons out, and I was getting my Turuiemons out. I was making sure whatever play I did was followed up by not leaving a 5k on the field if I could. If I could get go up to the 6k, the 7k, the 6k, the 10ks, if I could get them out without leaving a rookie that's under 5 or one of the under 5 blockers, I didn't put it out. I went a little bit slower against that deck, and so because it kind of made me do what I didn't want to do with the deck, that felt harder, especially since I bricked one of the games really bad, and it got to a spot where I almost lost. But I did end up going 14-0 on the day, so I didn't drop a single game the whole tournament. I did 2-0 every single opponent, which is surprising to me, but the deck ran good today, and it happens.
So what would you say the easiest matchup was for the deck?
Sorry to say, for my last opponent, it was definitely the Rookie Rush. That final round was my easiest match by far. It was also the most stressful going into it, just because you know that it's the last round. You know you're one win away from taking that first. It was the most stressful going in, but the moment I saw that Upamon turnover, I was like, okay, this can go one of two ways. I can push faster, and maybe this is Imperial, and I know Imperial's doing well. Imperial can clear my stack too fast, so if I over-aggress and he comes out with Imperial, I could be dead. And so I thought about that, and then the moment he dropped a forget the exact name of the lion, 2-drop green for 5k, but the moment that hit the board, I knew exactly what it was. It was Rookie Rush. It was no longer Imperial, and the moment I saw that, I felt great and in a good spot, just because I know unless I brick bad, I can outpace that deck with just as much speed, recovery, and DP minus. And because of all that together, Rookie Rush gets put in a rough spot.
Playing a whole bunch of games and a whole bunch of different decks throughout the event, was there anything interesting that you noticed during the event, like any trends or like any just general observations?
The decks are definitely getting faster. I'm noticing that people are starting to get into seeing exactly what I was seeing, which is pushing a little bit faster and harder with these decks will cause you to win more games than just sitting back. The sitting back is good for certain decks, but it's gotten to the point where everybody's playing chicken. And so sometimes when the person comes out first and tries to do something, the other person capitalizes off of it and destroys your field and now has control. You have nothing in raising, so there's just no way to come back. The difference maker is if you can put on that same kind of aggression and come out of chicken first, but then can also mass put bodies out, it's going to win games. I mean, Purple Melga into a double Nailbone, yeah, you came out first with your Melga, but if you could double Nailbone and put 4 other bodies on board, that's a big difference. And same with this. I just pushed out in the first couple turns. If I get a Wargrey and bring myself down to 3 security and put out 2 extra bodies and heal back up, I'm going to do it. And that's what I did most of the time, was I would do a string of plays that would allow me to get a Wargrey on field, get a couple hits, take out something on field, put out one general rookie and then one healing rookie to make sure that I could get both out with the Angewomon effect. So aggression, it's definitely seeing more and more people starting to push towards the aggression instead of just sitting back into raising forever.
All right, and then do you have any final thoughts about the deck, your team, and their overall performance and the event as a whole?
Well, definitely shout out to Team Wolfpack. Obviously, for anybody who's interested, we definitely take members in. We don't turn members down unless there's a giant issue with that player. We don't over-recruit too much, but we love having more people there. We like play testers. We like being able to talk about decks, everything like this. We break a lot of things down. So definitely hit me up on Discord if you or anybody from the team if you're interested. And then just shout out to all of them. They're supportive. Bad days, good days, days where you want to take your deck and set it on fire. I mean, they're all there. They're going to listen to it. And we've had plenty of days where we've just argued until the points were across. And then shout out to all the great content creators out there. Again, when I don't get enough games in, or it's a point in time where I just can't play at that exact moment, watching your guys' streams and your matchups, hundreds of them again and again and again, it actually is very helpful because I get a lot of information from that. You guys reach out to a lot more variety of people, and so seeing your guys' matchups really helped me. And then shout out to all the opponents. I know it's not the best on the receiving end, but most of them were pretty good sports about the games today. I would say at least 5 of them I sat down and talked to for a little bit after the game as well, and we discussed some stuff, especially a couple of the Wargrey players that were playing similar decks or ideas, and they would ask me about the pieces. So shout out to opponents who actually want to sit down and talk a little bit, because too used to either players getting salty or just such a negative aspect that we played a game you didn't win, and so everybody just has to be unhappy. So shout out to all the players, opponents today who actually sat down and talked to me a bit.
All right. And thank you, Wulfknightz, for coming and taking part in this interview. I do appreciate all of the work that you're putting in and everything that you did.
All right. Thank you for having me.
So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are different ways that you could support me in the channel. So one of those ways is I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so whenever you use that affiliate link to buy cards off of tcgplayer.com, then some of the money will go to supporting me in the channel. And on top of which, I also do stream over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu. So following and subbing is a good way to support me over on that platform as well. And on top of that, I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook. So whenever you buy one of my designs through them, then some of that money will also help go to supporting me in the channel. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.